The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe.
Greater Salem, New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce presents Success in the 603, a podcast focusing on Granite Staters who have had success in the public or private sector. We'll hear stories of how these people came to be, where they are, and what you can do to get there too. Sit back and enjoy. You are in wicked awesome company.
Well, welcome back. We're into our second podcast, Success in the 603, production of the Greater Salem Chamber of Commerce. My name's Donna Morris. I serve as the president of the Greater Salem Chamber. And
hi, I'm Craig Dufton. I'm with Keller Williams Realty, and I'm also a small business owner here in Salem. And I just wanted to start out by, before I introduce our amazing guest, I wanted to thank everybody out there in the Facebook community. We've only had one podcast. We had over 450 views. We have over 300 likes. I mean, it's absolutely incredible for one podcast. Great support. Even my wife was in the studio last week. It was great. So we're having a great time at this. I hope you can join us every week.
And I hope they tell all their friends. Let's grow this.
Yeah,
400 is great, but we can keep going.
400 could be 4,000. Be awesome.
Just saying.
So wicked awesome.
All right. So the basic philosophy behind our podcast is that New Hampshire is filled with amazing people that have risen to success in their industry, and they all have a story. So that's kind of why we started this. Craig and I were talking. We both wanted to do this, and we'll have these one-on-one conversations out there, and we'll hear this story. And wouldn't it be great if we could share it, if they could share it, and if it could live in perpetuity out there in
click on it anytime and go back to it and refer to it.
Yeah.
It's great.
So who's joining us today, Craig?
Today we have longtime Salem superintendent. It's Michael Delahanty.
Don't age him too much.
No. I'm not. I will never age anyone on this show. That's guaranteed.
Long time.
Welcome, Michael. Just wanted to thank you for coming here today.
Well,
I know.
Thank you for having me.
You've got a busy week coming up.
Busy week.
Yeah, I hear there's something going on Sunday.
Yes, our grand opening of newly renovated, refurbished Salem High School.
Nicely done. A long time coming. I'm going to push you up here.
Okay, that's fine.
You can talk.
Sorry.
But,
it's stunning. The renovations have been absolutely fantastic.
We're very, very pleased with the turnout, and it's very proud of what it looks like and what it provides our kids.
Yeah, even as a taxpayer, I'm very happy.
That's one half of his job.
It'll give you a fantastic return.
So before we get into that, because we are going to talk about that some more, and we're going to focus on that towards the end of the show. I wanted to talk about your background. You have an incredible background. You've come from the North Woods of Maine, way up in Millinocket. Not a lot of people have heard of it. I've actually been to the town myself, and unlike our guest last week, Peter Rayner, who his dad was a police officer. And he's a banker. Your dad was actually an administrator too. Is that correct?
Well, he was a high school guidance counselor.
Okay, all right.
Very influential on many students and certainly many of my friends. But as you know, fathers and sons sometimes have strained relationships, or at least tense relationships. So he wasn't probably as effective a counselor for me. He was my dad, and I absolutely looked up to him. Loved him very much, and he was a tremendous influence on my life. But yeah, he worked in the school and had a unique relationship with a lot of kids, as counselors sometimes do.
Sure.
They counted on him. They would visit our home late at night if they had some challenges or difficulties. So they saw him in a very different light than I did.
So he was like a 24-hour counselor for some people?
Oh, absolutely. For some. He was always on call. He'd take phone calls late at night, early in the morning, and at any time, really.
And so how long did he do that for up in Millinocket?
He was a counselor for about 25 years. He was a longtime smoker and contracted lung cancer in the mid-'60s. They took a lung out. So he struggled a little bit after that. He was a very active guy and didn't really follow his doctor's advice, and had a heart attack when I was young. And all of his influence certainly has stayed with me for all these years. No smoking influence. Good. That's right.
That's good.
No smoking. And then when he passed away, many of his friends also supported me, took me under their wing. So I have them to thank too for the path that I took.
So let's talk about the path that you took.
Sure.
were you born in Millinocket?
I was born and raised in Millinocket.
Okay.
As you know, it's a mill town,
Sure.
or was a mill town back then. So aspirations for many of my classmates were work at the Great Northern Paper Company. And I did work summers there, particularly when I went home from college. And
Which was Plymouth State.
Which Plymouth State as an
University, right?
undergraduate.
Oh,
Yes,
so is that what brought you
exactly.
to the 603 then? Plymouth,
Well,
or-
initially it brought me to the 603. What kept me here brought me back. I started my education career in Maine. My wife was a flight attendant for Eastern Airlines and was flying in and out of Boston and had quite a commute, even though she would leave for several days at a time. Traveling 90 miles one way was
miles, not miles per hour,
miles.
for the record.
Well, yeah, miles, exactly. So when I earned my degree in administration, I started looking in the greater Boston area for jobs. And Paul Johnson was the superintendent of schools back in 1987.
Yes, the great Paul Johnson.
Paul Johnson, a legend here in Salem. And so he hired me as the principal of North Salem School.
So before that, though, you were in Southern Maine. You went
I was
to
in
school.
Southern
You went to
Maine.
school at Southern Maine for your master's.
I did.
Okay.
Southern New Hampshire, Southern Maine, the University of Southern Maine. I got my degree in administration. I started a degree in counseling, and this is a true story. I just did not get along with my classmates. They wanted to process, and I didn't. They wanted to talk about their feelings, and I didn't. And so one of my instructors suggested that I would try a different
Try maybe the administrative role of
Yes.
being in charge of all those people.
Less
so you can-
sensitive, yes.
so you can dictate
So I've
what
been
you're gonna
accused
talk
of
about?
being that.
Okay.
So yeah, I did. I settled in Standish, Maine, which is part of School Administrative District 6, which is about 20 miles west of Portland.
Yep.
And loved the area, loved Portland. But then eventually found my way to Salem, and I've been here ever since.
So you came to Salem for your wife, basically, because
Exactly.
you wanted to try to
Right,
get closer
right.
to Boston, so she
Yes.
could do her job and you could do your job.
Exactly. Without
compromise.
without a lot of
there's a lot of that.
driving
Salem
hassle.
is very, very convenient. I know.
It is.
That's why we ended up here.
It's-
My
yeah,
husband's a
it's perfect.
Manchester guy. I'm an Epping girl, and we both worked in Cambridge. And Salem is just, you can't beat the accessibility to Seacoast Mountains and
Exactly.
Boston.
Yeah,
It's
30
great.
minutes from
It
pretty much
offers,
everything.
It offers just everything.
Yeah.
Really.
So the year's 1987. You come here to North Salem, right?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
And at the time, the school, all the 6th grade students moved over to Hague School, and it became a total 6th grade school. And North Salem, at the time, Salem didn't offer kindergarten.
Right.
So it was a grade 1 through 5 school, and maybe 450, 460 kids. So the school was a little bit larger in number or population than it is now.
Okay, so now we're going to get to administrative stuff after this, after you were principal of North Salem. But before we do that, I'm going to kick it over to Donna because we've got to pay some bills. We've
Okay,
It's
sure.
true.
got some sponsors so we can keep this great
Understandable.
podcast going.
It is true. Success in the 603 is made possible by our sponsors, and we'd like to thank 2 of them at this time. First of all, Tuscan Kitchen. Tuscan Kitchen encompasses the authentic tastes of Italy and shares it with their guests. Everything is prepared in-house. All the pastas are made fresh, the bread's crafted daily in their artisan bakery, and the desserts are carefully created by master pastry chefs. So please be sure to visit one of their 2 locations in New Hampshire or their 2 locations in Massachusetts, and you can learn more at tuscanbrands.com. Also, a shout out to SFC Engineering Partnerships. SFC has been providing structural, fire protection, civil engineering, surveying, and accessibility consultation to private, commercial, industrial, and municipal markets for over 20 years. Great group of people over there at SFC Engineering. You can visit them at sfceng.com. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, sponsors. Appreciate it. All right, so let's go back. We're still in the late 80s. Ironically, I graduated from high school in 1986, but we'll talk about that on another podcast.
I'm just glad to know I'm younger.
So what was it? You
Wondering.
said it was 4 or 5 years that you were at North Salem?
5 years
Okay.
at North Salem, and in the time I was there, I decided that a central office job was where I wanted to be.
Okay.
There was so much going on in the late 80s. Ronald Reagan had come out in the early 80s with his Nation at Risk document. And then following that with the famous line, "We are a nation at risk, and if this education system was foisted upon America, it would be declared an act of war." So it wasn't flattering for educators, and I wanted to be part of a resurgence of education, and thought that a central office position would be the place for me. So I went back to the University of New Hampshire for my Certificate of Advanced Graduate Studies.
Great. I saw that. And you also later on worked on your doctorate too as well.
I did, yes. So I moved from North Salem to Woodbury School. The principal at the time moved on to become an assistant superintendent in another district. And I went to Woodbury as principal. And at the time, the first year I was there, it was a grade 7-8 school. But then the very following year, Hague opened as an elementary school, and all the sixth graders moved into Woodbury. Very crowded school because it had been about 650 or so kids, and all of a sudden it was about 950, and we used every available space in the building. The superintendent's office had consumed about 4 or 5 classrooms at one end. The superintendent and the board built that structure now that's at the end of the parking lot at Salem High School. That's where the superintendent's office is. Freed up that space. And then the second year I was at Woodbury, we became a 6, 7, 8 school.
So that was like, you gained about 19 or so classrooms is what I had read
it
somewhere.
was about
so this is your first project that you had.
My first project,
your
that's
first
right.
project of renovating
so
Salem schools.
We needed to add space at Woodbury, and it was an 18 classroom addition with some specialty spaces added in. Right, and it was exciting. It was inconvenient for a year or so, but we made it through, and it was a beautiful addition at the time.
Talk about some of the challenges that you have. You know, you've in the 31 years that you've been with us. You know, you've gotten a lot of changes, a lot of geographic changes, a lot of influx of students, a lot of outflux of students. That, gone up and down with the kids, but. What was the biggest challenge there for you with Woodbury when you went in? When you go from if you got a young Michael Delahanty out there who's thinking about doing the same thing, going down the same road, what is his biggest challenge going to be going from a small school to a big middle school like that to a high school? Because you were the principal of the high school too as well.
That's right. So at Woodbury, the biggest challenge was integrating teachers that were unfamiliar. So you had an entire staff of an elementary school, essentially, that then became part of a long-standing, long-time experienced middle school with its experienced teachers, and many of them did know each other congenially, but not collegially.
Okay.
And so developing some teams and mixing some people up and really making some difficult decisions about who wasn't going to be doing what they had always been doing, who was going to be sort of pushed out of their comfort zone and into doing some things that were a little challenging, things they hadn't done before, was somewhat stressful, but I knew that was the direction we had to go. And if there's any advice I would give to any young administrator is you do what you know you need to do, and not worry about how people regard you or consider you as an individual or as a professional.
That sounds like why you got away from that feeling thing and a little bit more black and white. Like, okay, this is how it's going to be.
A little more managerial.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a perfect fit, and you grow into that. It's like that's a good fit.
That's right. Well, I tell administrators that you really can't be affirmed at your workplace. You have to get your hugs and kisses at home. If you're looking at the workplace as the place where someone is going to validate what you do day in and day out, then you're in the wrong position, or you're aspiring to the wrong position. You really need to have outside influences that show their love and affection.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about your outside influences when we get back. Donna's going to do one more commercial, and then we're going to talk about who influenced you the most in your career, and who's still influencing you in your career, possibly.
So it gives you some time to think. It's good. It's all good. So I want to do a shout out to Pica's Pub and Grill. In 1939, Albert Pappy Pica opened up Pica's Garden Night Cafe. after almost 80 years and 3 generations later, his great-grandson Shane is picking up where Pappy left off. With a focus on great food, drinks, and a staff always sporting a smile, they're open 7 days a week, so be sure to check out Pika's Pub and Grill at 10 Ayers Village Road in Methuen, Mass. And I must say, I do frequent Pika's. It's a mile from my house, and I run into Craig there. And get a little food,
Donna,
get a little
guilty as
beverage,
charged.
maybe play a game of Keno. Just saying, it's a fantastic place, and be sure to check it out.
Sounds wonderful.
And it's like 12 feet from the border
Yeah.
of Salem, New Hampshire. So
facility.
we're gonna include them in the 603.
You
on
can
that
literally park in New Hampshire, I think, and walk into Methuen. It's right on the line.
one. Okay, so
Honorary
let's keep moving. Let's keep moving on with Michael Delahanty here. You went to Woodbury. You stayed at Woodbury from, I believe it was 92 to 2000.
That's right. So I was there 8 years.
And you
then
got
I
a lot done.
Moved to the high school.
You did get a lot done.
Yeah, I'd like to think we accomplished a lot. By the time I left, it was a truly special place. I loved people there. I loved the kids. But the high school principalship opened, and the superintendent talked with me about taking that job. And I saw it as an opportunity to get that experience. It's something I hadn't done before.
Sure.
So
It's a logical choice,
school.
too, right? For someone who's going to aspire. Did you think that you would be superintendent one day or assistant superintendent?
I
Or
didn't,
When did you
I-
actually think about that?
Yeah, so I aspired to a central office position early on, but I knew that I had more years of experience in school management and school leadership to gain before I would take that step. At least I felt it was better for me professionally and better for anyone that I would work with and supervise.
Sure.
So the high school experience was good for me, and I really think I would have spent more time there, but I spent 2 years, and the assistant superintendent for the district moved on, and the superintendent approached me and asked if I was interested in the central office. But initially,
Who was the superintendent at that
Hank
time?
LeBranch, Dr.
Dr.
Henry
LeBranch,
LeBranch.
right, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
a strong mentor for me, a wonderful person.
A good segue into our mentor.
Yeah. So he wanted me to stay at the high school. He felt they needed stability in leadership, and said, if you're thinking about coming to the center, forget about it. It's not going to happen. But then the pool of assistant superintendent candidates was quite shallow. So he came back and said, well, what do you think? And so I...
That must have been an interesting conversation.
It was.
He came back.
Yeah, no. So I moved to the central office, and less than a year later, he talked with me and said, I'm going to retire. You interested in being the superintendent?
Talk about fast tracking.
Right. So that's not... I loved being assistant superintendent because I had built quite a network of people within the district that I trusted and could go to, and worked hard. And I thought we were getting a lot done and advancing the district instructionally and curriculum-wise.
And you had a great mentor.
And I had a great mentor, and he was retiring. So
how did he? What did you take from him as influences? What were the major things that you could think of? I mean, I hate to put you on the spot like that.
No,
I mean,
it's fine. One of the things he made sure I understood was you treat people with respect. You treat people fairly, and that's not always equally.
Sure.
And make sure that you attend to the community and the community's needs, and not worry so much about what people outside this sphere of influence will think about you. And if you can avoid getting caught up in the trap of caring about whether you're liked or not liked, then you'll be fine. But if you start worrying about how people are going to consider you, then you're going to have some
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the less you care about that, in the long run, you probably end up being liked more, like a person that's clear and committed and that's actually very likable.
I've come to believe that, and I also understand that if people don't like me, then that's fine too.
We like you.
Oh, yeah, we both do.
And I like
the
you
record.
guys.
But I mean, listen. I honestly, I can speak from experience. Both of my children, as you know both of
Yes.
them. Both of them well, and
Good boys.
they both graduated from Salem High School. Nothing happened. They're great kids. They're both going on to college. I think the one thing that I can say is that you are committed. You are committed to the process, no matter what the process is, whether people believe it or not, or believe in it or not. Because when you become superintendent, you become a little bit political too.
Absolutely.
I mean?
It's definitely a political position.
It's a little bit more political than principal of the high school, which is a political
most definitely.
position too as well. But
most definitely.
Speak about that aspect of how do you approach that? That you have town versus, budget committee. You have all these people that you're.
Not to mention parents and
sure.
And community.
Exactly.
Leaders.
So much of the success of the school district depends on the relationships you build, and I had to build relationships with the school board. School board members are elected positions.
Yep.
And knowing that any member in any one year or another could be changed out, I'm always respectful of the board members. I always know my place. They are truly the ones that direct the district, and they direct me. They supervise me, and then I supervise and direct the rest of the district. So board being political, I have to maintain my solid relationships with them. But then the budget committee, also an elected position, and having some influence on the direction the district takes because they influence our resources, our financial resources. I make sure I have good relationships with them. And then there's the town manager. I've always enjoyed a very good relationship with the individuals who have served as town manager, including my predecessor and mentor, Henry LaBranche.
There's been quite a few town managers. That's a whole other story.
Yes,
too.
that's
over
another story.
30 years.
We have a long-standing one right now, though, Chris Dillon. And
yes,
we're actually going to be meeting with Chris Dillon in the next few weeks.
Who is a wonderful man.
But in 30 years, you've probably seen 5 or 6 town managers at least.
Oh, more than that.
Yeah,
easily.
so that's
in my time as superintendent, I've seen
great advice for people out there. Like, know that, I know working for a nonprofit, my chairman of the board changes every year.
Right.
I think that's a great piece of advice to people out there. It's like, it's not about the person, it's about the position. And if you have to work with that position, you need to keep an open mind and a good relationship with those people.
That's right. It's absolutely true.
So Henry LaBranche, excuse me.
Yes.
Who was also town manager at some point.
He was for many years.
He was, and then he was town manager again, and then he was interim town manager.
Exactly.
So, who else? Well, so you talked about your dad.
One of the greatest influences was my dad, and he was a stern disciplinarian and expected me to toe a line and behave myself, and he would set consequences for me if I did something I shouldn't have done that were opportunities to learn. So I get into a little bit of a difficult circumstance one, and before I could go back to what I was doing, he made me memorize a poem that has influenced my life ever since. And I mentioned some I'll tell you a quick story. Some other people that stepped up after my father passed away. I worked summers for the Great Northern Paper Company. As a paper company, you make paper. They have these large vats with liquid paper that's called pulp, and we had to wash water down is drained so the pulp could drain. This pulp was very hot, maybe 120, 130 degrees. So a friend of mine was standing in the middle of the pulp with these big rubber boots, and I had to turn on some water so he could hose down the pulp and get it to wash down the drain. And this man sent me over to the valve, this water wheel valve, to turn on so he could wash, and the pulp was coming in. I didn't mention it, so it's rising. So it's up. Probably. Is
he getting concerned with his
He was
rubber boots?
getting very concerned. And if it reached his knees, it would have started pouring into his boots. So I was screaming, "I can't turn this wheel! I can't turn this wheel!" And this gentleman ran through the pulp. He only had work boots. So he came running over through the pulp, and he took an iron bar, put it down through the spokes in the handle of the valve, and hit it with a sledgehammer. And the water came rushing out, and the kids started washing the pulp down the drain. And this gentleman screamed at me and said, "There's no such thing as can't do. I don't want to ever hear you again say you can't do something." And that has always resonated with me. And I think that because I have this innate belief that anything is possible with hard work, with perseverance, with commitment. I think the genesis was that day as a very young man and being screamed at.
That's a great story.
It is a great story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not one I would have thought you would have told. That was a pretty good one.
I'm kind of curious about the poem, though. Are you going to save that for your quote? Because we love
the poem, if there are a
your
couple of
quote.
lines. It's one of the lines.
Save that. That's okay.
Yeah,
Yes, we'll save that because we have the Santo Insurance quote of the week. But Donna's got one more commercial for us, correct?
Okay.
Sure. This one I'm
Okay.
actually going to pop in two of our
Okay.
sponsors. Again, Success in the 603 is made possible through our sponsors, and we are definitely open to sponsors. If you want to sponsor, give me a call, 603-893-3177 at the Chamber. But we want to say thank you very much to Travis Terry and Company, CPAs. Travis Terry and Company operates on the foundation of honesty and integrity and hard work for you. Located at 25 Main Street in Salem, New Hampshire, they make taxes less taxing. Give them a call at 898-2511, of course, 603.
Yes.
And Canopy Lake Park, what a great business that we are so fortunate to have here in Salem. Canopy Lake Park, just for fun. For over 115 years, Canopy Lake Park has been leading the way in family entertainment. This year for the holiday season, give the gift of a memory with tickets to Canopy Lake Park. They make perfect stocking stuffers. You can visit them at www.canopylakepark.com.
Excellent. So Erin Daly says hello to us on Facebook Live. Say hello to Erin Daly. How are
Daly,
you?
our chairman of the board this
Yep.
year. She liked it so
Hey,
much, she
Erin.
did it twice. She's great.
So one more thing I wanted to ask you about, because obviously over the years you must have formed some habits that you get into. Do you do any weekly, daily, monthly? I mean, do you time blocking? Talk about some of the habits that you do, Michael, really quick, and then we'll get into some.
I have a very, very structured daily routine that I don't deviate from. I get up in the morning, I work out.
I'm going to guess that you're an early riser.
I'm an
Michael,
early
'cause
riser.
I'm
yes.
assuming someone's going to be out on the roads to check these roads.
Exactly.
And when
So
you're from
tomorrow
Millinocket,
morning,
you're
there'll be
not
one.
getting any school days off. Okay.
No.
One thing I've learned.
Oh, there's
Right.
only 3 inches.
But
They'll
not
be
putting
school.
any rate. Well, 3 inches of snow is not that bad. It's like a quarter of an inch of freezing rain that can be bothersome.
Yeah, I think you had school
which
that day.
Maybe I may have, but it was because
think
the
you still had
Salem DPW.
But we can
did
have a
great
whole
job
podcast with
teasing
Michael
me out.
about school days, whether they should be school or shouldn't be
Yeah,
school.
well,
So-
sure, if there were
It's
call-ins.
again,
they'd have their
back
opinions.
to who cares if you're liked.
Exactly. I stay off social media. I get told what is said or
That's
written.
funny. So anyway, we didn't interrupt.
Go ahead. Go back to your habits. I
Yeah.
So
apologize.
again, it's structured. I get up, I work out. I don't, I don't have the physical appearance of someone who looks like Mark Wahlberg, who works out intensely. But I do try to take care of myself and stay in good health, so I can get to work every day. I get to work. I scan a few newspapers. I send off a few letters, and at night I make sure I.
What time do you get to work? Let's let everybody know what time you get to work.
I get.
I mean, if you don't mind.
between 5:30 and 5:45.
Okay.
wow.
And sometime around, generally if someone calls the office at that time, I'll pick up. And
Okay.
So
people
you're
are always
at.
surprised.
So you've
to
already
see
worked
me.
out by
I'm not sure you
5:30.
want to
Yes.
mention
What
that
time
to
are
people,
you
but-
getting up? 4:30?
I get up at 3:30 in the
No,
morning
you
every day.
don't.
Yep, yep.
Wow.
It's just almost automatic. And
Wow.
I say that I'm probably going to be sorry I said that because people aren't going to believe me. It doesn't matter to me. Believe it or
I don't
not,
care.
but,
We've established
Right
that.
there,
I don't
right.
care.
I'm an early morning riser too. I'm typically up between 4 and 5 every
Yeah.
morning. Not so much 3:30, but there are times where
well, it's quiet.
Yep.
Get
Get a lot of stuff done.
focused.
You get,
you can get some things done.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I
just
think 6 is
But I'm
early.
also, most nights I'm out, but I try to be home by 9:30, 10 o'clock, and try to be in bed right away. I don't have a lot of time at night, but I make sure I hug and kiss my wife every night. Tell her I love her very much. I make sure I send an email to my son every morning, and make sure I close it with "I love you."
Excellent.
So they both know that I love them very much.
That's
Awesome.
great.
So, again, we talked about the young Michael Delahanty before. I mean, he's out there. He might be here in New Hampshire. He might be in Salem. He might be up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, as far as we know. But what advice are you going to give now? Because in the age of, here we are with a computer screen in front of us with social media
Sure.
broadcasting us live, something we didn't have in 1987 when you started here in Salem. But, the things have changed so much. What do you give the 2018 version of you? What would you want to say to him?
I would say you can't blame others for problems. As long as you accept responsibility for your success and your failure, then you're going to be fine. Once you start looking for outside forces to justify or explain why you quit or why you stopped or why you can't, then you're not going to achieve what it is you set out to achieve. But everybody who is successful will tell you that it's a lot of hard work, made to look easy, but it's not.
Wow, amazing stuff, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story.
We got our
This is
Santo
good.
Insurance quote of the week, and then we're going to talk about the ribbon cutting coming up for a couple seconds, and then we're going to wrap it up. It's been a great show so far. You've been amazing, Michael.
Okay.
Thank you so
Let's
much
make
for
it
even
easy.
being here.
Sure.
But let's hear your quote. You must have some kind of quote you
Right.
live by. Because a
So-
guy who gets up at 3:30 in the morning every morning, got to have some kind of words to
Yes.
live by.
So I would say that in the darkest of times, you need to be able to fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. If you can sustain the darkest times with the greatest stamina and overcome whatever that dark time is, then you and everyone around you will be fine. So filling the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run.
Does that relate to the poem?
It's a line in the poem,
in the
If by
poem?
Rudyard Kipling, yes.
Yeah. So, how long is the whole poem?
The
And do you
poem is
remember
about
it?
36 lines. I could recite it.
Take it away.
Yeah.
I want to
It would
hear
take a
it. If it's got that good a message in those lines, let's hear it.
There are a lot of good lines. If you can walk with kings and keep your virtue, or walk with crowds nor lose the common touch. It starts with if you can keep your head while all about you are losing theirs and blaming you. There's a line, if you can hear the words you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools. So there's just
All the life lessons inside of that.
Wow.
there
poem,
is
right?
there are actually books written about several very meaningful lines in that
So is
poem.
Kipling? I'm gonna have to look that up.
Rudyard Kipling, yes. I would strongly urge anyone to.
So what are you reading right
I have
now?
a-
What's Michael Delahanty got on his table or by his books?
Sure. So
Nightstand, I should say.
there's an author who wrote "The Obstacle is the Way," and it's generally the obstacle that the title comes from a quote. The obstacle in the path is the path. The obstacle in the way is the way. And that's from Marcus Aurelius and an emperor of Rome.
Yep.
And Ryan Holiday is the author. And he does have regular emails that he'll send if you're a subscriber and you enjoy his writing. And I certainly would commend that book to anyone.
Excellent. Wow, that was like half an hour just blows by. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. But I had a really quick, I did have somebody email me earlier or text me that they wanted to ask you a question about, the high school being finished. Everything on the inside is beautiful. Now, what are we going to do about the outside? We doing anything with the fields? Is there a plan to do something with the sports fields?
There is.
I'd heard some.
No rest for the weary.
Yeah, I know.
There is a plan.
What's
for the
next for
field.
Michael
So,
Delahanty?
yes.
Before
right. Well, we're meeting very shortly, convening our partners to start talking about what we can do with Woodbury School. It's the only school that hasn't been
Right.
renovated.
Yeah, the school district over the past whatever it's been 5 years or so, it's just been tremendous. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, I'm so
it
grateful.
makes a
It's
big
great.
difference.
Absolutely.
It makes a big difference.
As
not
a
only for
realtor, it makes a
safety
great
and
difference for
security.
me, bringing people into a beautiful
Yeah.
school system, and I mean the high school is just second to none.
So we're creating a brochure, by the way, that should be ready in the next several weeks about the district that
Great.
we'll want to distribute to some realtors who are
the Chamber of
who are
Commerce.
making, and the Chamber of Commerce who are
course.
making some possible.
Excellent. We'll be happy to help you out with
sales.
that.
So we do have a field project that will be on the warrant this March. It's about $4.6 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but that will be reduced by $550,000 that we already have in an account that was set aside for a track. We'll reduce that by about $350,000 by selling some property the school district owns. At most, if we were to finance the entire thing for 10 years, it would be about $35 for the average home, assessed at $350,000. So $35 a year for 10 years, and that's the absolute maximum. We actually less than that. It would be a new field, new track, new bleachers, new press box, and new storage concession and restroom facilities. And it's a project that would be beautiful and certainly complement that.
Now, was that
beautiful high
part of the
school
original
facility.
project that kind of got carved out, or did
Right.
you?
So the board decided that they didn't want to risk the bigger high school renovation project with people objecting to what would be solely an athletic facility.
Okay.
So we have a new four-court gym, we have a completely refurbished Davis gym, and we have a new performing arts center.
An
so there
amazing
is-
performing arts
It's
center.
a beautiful
If you
center.
haven't seen it,
yeah.
the New Hampshire Philharmonic is
Very
going to
proud.
be
Yes,
making
it's
their
their
home
home.
there
It's
now.
their
and
Well,
home.
basically,
It's an-
come see it.
Actually,
on Sunday.
December 1st.
Yes, Sunday,
Yep.
November 18th.
Yep.
We're having our grand opening and ribbon cutting, 1:45. The governor is committed to being here. Chuck Morris will be speaking.
Excellent.
And the governor will speak. So 1:45 is the ribbon cutting, and then probably 2 o'clock we'll hear some speaking, and then Bob Berthel, who's our media coordinator and an extraordinary talent in his own right, has developed a video that shows the historic development from start to finish.
Oh, that's going to be
And
fantastic. I can't wait
it'll
to
be
see it.
beautiful. We've had some partners that have some speaking parts in the video. So, and then around 2:30 or so, we'll have guided and self-guided tours depending on interests.
There you go, Salem.
Yeah, and actually, I just want to take a minute on behalf of the chamber to thank you, Michael. It's been great to work with you. I've over the years, we've had some projects together.
Yes,
and it's
some
nice that the
wonderful
business
projects.
community isn't. I mean, I think it went back to when Dean Kikos was the chairman of the board, and he's like, "Hey, the chamber should support this high school renovation project because." Ultimately, it makes our whole community better, and I like
Absolutely.
that it's not just the business community and the school system and all these little silos out there. It's like
Right,
we're a
right.
community, and we make up the character of that community. So we've done everything from the Night of Lights, which is coming up, and that'll
Yes.
be a lot of fun.
Yep.
Little
Yes.
community spirit events.
November 29th.
Our buddy
And
Peter
6
Reno.
p.m. That's right.
And
Peter
who
is
knew,
gonna
like that
co-host
this
with
this
Donna.
community was kind of hungry for that type
Right.
of community event. Like we thought we'd have a couple hundred people. First year, 800 people, just
My
lighting,
son
lighting
was a
tree.
snowman one year, so
So those are the
Yeah,
type
it's
of
nice
things.
that we involve just businesses and high school students. The performing arts groups. Really fantastic.
Yeah.
it's a great time. Michael,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank
You've
you
been an
so
amazing
much.
guest and
It's
you've
easy
been an amazing
when,
asset
work
to
with
the
wonderful
to the
people.
town of Salem too.
Well,
you really have.
Well, again, nothing is done. Donna and the business community, you with the business community and the real estate community, people understand what needs to be done, and there's no shortage of people ready to step up when they're well aware of what needs to be done.
Wow.
And that's what makes this community a special place.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for watching on Facebook. Please check us out on podcasts, Podbean. We're in Apple right now. We're all over the place. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. So please continue your support. We love it.
And we want to thank our guest, Michael. You have been wicked awesome company.
Yes, wicked
Thanks
awesome
for
company.
joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.